Hello, this is an update on the Runebender Xilem port project I'm working on for November 21st. The big thing that I did recently was I added a feature for loading and saving Hyperbézier paths. So, like you can see what we did. Let me run that again. So you run the application with cargo run release. Here is your welcome screen, which the neat thing about the welcome screen is it's kind of like a fully functional editor just without any of the UI. And over here we have open UFOs. So we go open UFOs, and in the Runebender Xilem repository on my GitHub, we have a new file in assets that is called Hypermatisse. And let me see here. So this is, I've had this book on my desk for a while. It's like a Matisse book. I kind of like the shapes and colors. And I've been doing a lot of work on doing LLM post-training for font editors, because kind of a big goal of mine with the font editors I'm working on is building like an open source cursor for fonts style application. And so that got me really interested in the Hyperbézier idea after running into problems with doing my own post-training and doing my own like small neural networks for doing fonts, and running into the problem that a lot of the problem with LLMs doing this kind of stuff is like curve quality. And the whole idea of Hyperbézier is that it can kind of automate curve quality. And so now we can load and save Hyperbézier UFOs in Runebender Xilem. And you can kind of see this is the Hypermatisse UFO, and what it is it's just the 1 through 9 Unicode code points, and each is filled with a different like Hyperbézier leaf structure, like this. And so, and another thing, I'll go over this later, but we've actually completely ported all of the Runebender tools over to the toolbar. So I guess the interesting thing about this is Hyperbézier, these are just UFO files, but Hyperbézier isn't like supported in the UFO spec. So what I've done is I've basically just made my own little mini Hyperbézier spec, and I've put that in the Runebender Xilem repo, and I've given it like special instructions, so I guess it would kind of make sense to show what the actual source of that looks like. So this is the UFO source for what we were just looking at. And so you can see that this is glyph 5. It's at Unicode hex value 0035 with advanced width. So all of this up till here is standard UFO. The big difference here is, so there's contour, and normally this wouldn't have an identifier, but I've added an identifier. And this identifier for Hyperbézier, this is, as far as I know, this is on spec with the UFO spec. So I haven't actually broken the UFO spec at this point. And the really nice thing about this is that I can combine contours that are Hyperbézier, so I could have another contour that's not Hyperbézier, and I could have a mixed file. So I could have a font that had only like 1 or 2 Hyperbézier glyphs, and it would just be identified as this. And if you're compiling the font and the font compiler doesn't support this, it would just support this, export this to like a broken cubic outline. And so I have type curve here because I think that accurately describes how all of these are Hyperbézier curves with the off-curve points set to Hyperbézier mode. And the really nice thing about this is you can see that this is a very simple XML file. So LLMs are really good at generating stuff like this. Even without post-training, an LLM can generate like a basic shape with this. And then given post-training, you can actually do like some really nice work with this. And it's simple and not dealing with the off-curve points. It makes everything kind of fit in context windows better, and it just makes it kind of tighter and nicer to work with. So there's a lot of advantages to this. I guess I should show the, let me quit out of this. So let's now run this. We will open that same file we were just looking at, and this is 5. So this is the shape we were just looking at. I think it's like 11 points, you can see. We can adjust them. And so this is what I have here, just having the points. This is something I changed while porting this tool to Runebender, and I'll show you how the tool works right now. So I select this spiral, I click. Ooh, that's okay, that's a little buggy. But you can kind of see how it's working here. It's just each line kind of becomes a curve as you're making the loop. And then so we close it, and now we have this Hyperbézier shape. And everything here is in kind of an automatic mode where there are off-curve points in how this is being calculated, and technically you can turn them off and make them kind of normal cubic or quadratic style off-curve points. But we've just hidden that from the UI to make this kind of a simple user interface for manipulating these blob shapes. Kind of, if you remember the term, if you're kind of older like me, and you were around in like early 2000s, you remember blobjects, and that was a kind of similar design software created trend where NURBS got introduced into CAD and 3D modeling software, and then that sparked a design trend of the blobject, which was this kind of industrial design Y2K blobby shape. Yeah. So anyway, if you haven't seen how Runebender Druid, the older version of Runebender, works for this, I will show you that right now. So this is an older version of Runebender. And you can see this is the Hyperbézier tool. And so, oops. Okay, so this is actually a good example right here of, it doesn't, I started drawing this and it started drawing these lines. And so if I didn't know how the Hyperbézier tool worked, I would just be drawing these lines. I'd close the path and I'd think, what the hell is this? What's the Hyperbézier? Like there's no discoverability to this. And when you're dealing with a new concept like Hyperbézier, they don't teach this in art and design schools. It's not something people are, immediately familiar with. I think a lot of people aren't even familiar with quadratic curves. I think many people can go through art or design school and they only ever interact with cubic curves, and there's just an assumption that this is how vector graphics work, and that's not really true at all. Like, there's tons of different ways you can do this. But the problem is discoverability and making it, instantly recognizable how this works, and like kind of training people on these new concepts. So let me restart this. Okay. So in order to do this in this older version, I have to click, drag out these points, and the X is Hyperbézier and the circle is not Hyperbézier. So this is a little bit confusing because we'll drag this out and we'll close the shape. And so now we have this. And let's see, we can, okay. So we move these around and then you see the points moving around. But the properties that make Hyperbézier nice to work with aren't immediately apparent because you just have like half the points are Hyperbézier. And it kind of moves around. It's like, okay, there's some off-curve points moving, so what? So what you have to do is you have to go through, and I think that like when this stuff first came out, there was like a blog post about this that was on Hacker News, and this was free and open source code. Anyone could play around with it, but like really nobody was like, hardly anyone was excited about this or really interested in it or like saw the possibilities in it. I did because I was playing around with it, but even then I was still, it took me a while to get to the idea that the default UI for this should be just no off-curve points. And so the way I think I'm going to have it work in Runebender Xilem is you will be able to add in off-curve points if you know what you're doing, but it's just going to default to the off-curve points being not there by default, and they'll have to be like discoverable by like reading a manual, reading the documentation. So now you can see, like, now after all that work, we've kind of like, we can see the shape here, and we can kind of see this is a cool thing to play around with because it makes it so it basically, any point you put this, you get a very smooth curve without kinks. And this is something that when people do manual, like non-AI assisted type design with cubic curves. There's a ton of manual labor that goes into removing kinks. There's some, procedural tools to get rid of the kinks, but being procedural, like they're very buggy, and it's kind of there's a lot of problems you run into with these kind of procedural tools. It's hard to explain, but like one way I think about it is I've been playing this game Final Fantasy Tactics, and there's an option in the game where you can automatically optimize your like armor, your cloak, your like weapon and everything in the shop when you're buying stuff. And a thing that you realize when you're playing the game is like there's this procedural way that the game automates like your armor, your accessories and all that stuff. And accessories, they affect like your magic points. They have special, like they can protect you from like certain spells like stone or something. And there's all this complexity, and this just the procedural process of doing this like auto select like never really works once you get to like a high level of this game. Like you're always gonna like, you might be going into a battle where you're fighting a certain kind of like wizard that uses the stone spell a lot. So the procedural thing might not equip you with the like jade bracelet that protects you from stone. It just doesn't work into the procedural way it does it. But if you know what you're doing, that works. And with type design outlines, I think it actually, it's a similar thing where these kind of like hard procedural ways of optimizing curves don't always work, and they always need to be like manually adjusted. And the Hyperbézier is really a way where you can make that whole process a lot easier, where you're automating certain things, but you're also going in and adjusting outlines. So you can see, so this is how it works in the old Runebender. And now let's just go back and do another drawing in the new Runebender. So just notice how much, the tool is still a little buggy, but so just notice just how instantly discoverable this is. We didn't have any of the confusing off-curve points. We didn't have any, it just didn't take any time. It's just you just made the loop and it works. Okay, so that's basically all the Hyperbézier stuff. Real quick, I'm just going to show the... Oh my goodness! What? I have never seen... What is going on? That is an insane bug. Oh my god, it's rendering these as hype. That is so weird. It looks like my screen cracked or something. What is going on? I've never seen this bug before, but anyway. Okay, so in this shape, like I just want to point out, we've got some of the other tools from Runebender ported. So we've got the knife tool, which breaks this, and I'm still trying to figure that out. But anyway, we can cut shapes with the knife tool, and then you go go in here and you can just move them, and now you've got multiple shapes. That's buggy, but it's basically ported. We've got the ruler tool, so you can measure stuff. That's a lot less buggy than the knife tool. We've got the shapes tool, which opens, unlike Runebender had separate ellipse and rectangle tools. I consolidated them into one shapes tool menu item, and so now we have a sub menu with rectangle and circle. Okay, and so you can drag out the circle, or this rectangle, and you can create rectangles like this, and you can, when you're dragging out, you can hold shift, and that constrains both sides, so you can create a square. We've got the same thing for the, oops, why is that? Okay, there we go. So we have the ellipse, and we can constrain the ellipse, and that creates a circle. And so that's basically it for today's update. These are all a little buggy, but basically the whole edit mode toolbar from Runebender Druid is ported. So that's really exciting. The next thing I need to do is, the really big thing I need to do is I'm going to work on porting the gap buffer text editor from Bézier, which is the previous font editor I was working on in Bevy. And what this is going to be is, this is going to be basically like a glyph style text editor in the editor. So you can do your kerning and spacing and testing all just in the editor. And you've got a text editor, and you can use Harf Rust to do right to left Arabic stuff. And that's going to be a big project, but I've already done it in Bevy, so pretty much all I need to do is just port it over. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'll do another update probably tomorrow or something. Bye.